First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of all of you, and thank you, Vince and Elio, and I think Renato, and asking me to speak. I was asked to speak on the topic of resilience, and it has been a story, much like the story, I'm sure, of your lives or your parents' lives. And it is a bit of a story on my business and how I operate, because I really invest in resilience, and little did I know that I needed to eat my own words not that long ago on the ultimate test of resilience. But let me just first start by talking about resilience as it's looking around the room and just meeting the folks who I have. If it's not you, it seems like it's your parents who had the ultimate act of resilience and unselfishness in moving to Canada and bringing you to a place for a better life. And when you really think about it, I think that, I stop and think about, would I give up absolutely everything that I have, all of my family, my language, etc., to simply go to another country for the potential gift of your family having a better life? And that's exactly what our parents did, and most of them didn't do it with very many dollars scraped together. And in fact, again, when Vince just mentioned our two families, unbeknownst to us, congregated in a small enclave at Jane and Shepherd in Toronto. They had to, out of survival. Many couldn't speak English, and many of them couldn't afford to survive without the community around them. But the resilience that they have, and I'm sure that many of you keep inside of you, is what has enabled you to all be tremendous, or to lead tremendous careers. Now, I look at you folks here, and when I remember graduating high school and going off to university, my first reaction on the folks that went to engineering, and most did go to UofT, is that these folks, I didn't use the word resilience at the time, but it was, they're really stupid, because they were working 40 hours a week, or going to school 40 hours a week, pulling all-nighters, where I went to school maybe 8 hours a week, going to the bars, relaxing and watching these guys go, what are they doing? And in hindsight, it really was the resilience. You need resilience to get where all of you folk are today. So it's very, very clear that whether you know it or not, your parents did pass on that gene over to you. So, and as it relates to my career, and I had a little bit of a circuitous path, going from first the accounting world, and then the advisory, and ultimately to the investment world. The one thing that I get asked all the time is, and I've now invested in, I don't even know, it's well over 100 companies or so. I've really lost track. Is there a single thread that links the most successful investments that you've made? And as Vincent indicated, I've had some great successes with backing companies like Shopify. I don't know if you know Hootsuite, Wave Accounting. There's a number of these companies. It's funny because you don't really think about it. I can tell you where I messed up, and I remember those very, very vividly. But there is a single thread, and it's not the particular product, it's not the market they're in, it's the management team or the entrepreneurs that I bet on, that were ultimately the core reason to success. But then when you actually tried to run a thread, what was common amongst them, it really was resiliency. And let me explain. When I would ask them first, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And in my mind, what I'm really running through is, how big is this problem? Has this problem been solved already? And the particular solution that they had, what was so unique about it? So I would run through those questions, but the thing that I would always pull at is, I'd ask them, why are you trying to solve this problem? And what I'm really looking for is this a problem that's been gnawing at them? A great example might be if someone had a parent or a loved one that perhaps has succumbed to cancer, and you say, you know what, I'm going to devote my life to solving the cure for cancer. And I don't care what it's going to take. It's that sort of thinking. And one example that was very vivid to me is that when I'm speaking to the founder of Shopify, and it's fascinating, the same thing that he told me back in 2012 is the same thing that he would say now. And he thought that it was not fair. He thought it was actually an injustice that the creator, the artisan, can't easily sell their stuff to the world without spending lots of money, engaging consultants in order to do that. And he created Shopify in order to enable that. And that's still the vision today. And so why is that important? Why is that purpose really important? It really drives the passion. That's what drives the resiliency. In that, when you're building a business or when you're having a goal, just like many of you had your goal of being an engineer, you have obstacles that go in your way all the time, and they're coming all the time. There has never been a single business that I've ever invested in where I just thought this business is going to fall away. So you're constantly faced with obstacles, and it's those that are passionate about the particular problem that they're trying to solve that are going to continue to pivot around the obstacles. And sometimes those obstacles land right on you, and in my case, it hits you from behind. And so those entrepreneurs or those folks who had a particular passion to achieve the success that you have had, each one of you had a reason and a particular passion to get around your various obstacles. And I am sure that none of you have done it for the money, because if you had, there's a lot easier ways to make money than to go through the paths that you folks have gone through. Turning it back on me, I mentioned obstacles. Well, here I am for the last 10 plus years explaining to folks this very common refrain of, what do I invest in? And I always would say, resiliency, you have to have your passion. And little did I know that I was going to eat those words, frankly, the hard way. So as Vince had indicated, when I was building the investment arms over at Omers, what I really wanted to do was, prior to that, I was on the board of Deloitte at the time, and I was gearing up as a candidate to be the CEO, or one of the candidates for the CEO of Deloitte. And I was a little ambivalent about it, only because being the CEO of a large organization like that was likely serving my ego and not really what my passion was. And my passion was to support entrepreneurialism in Canada through innovation. That was what my 30-year career had revolved around. And after the whole dot-com bust and there was no capital available for our entrepreneurs, I started getting very active in looking for ways, supported largely through government, on how we could stimulate innovation and entrepreneurialism. And in 2010, I was approached by OMERS to help them achieve this same thing that I've been trying to push for. And what otherwise had turned into an advisory capacity, the CEO of OMERS at the time had asked me, no, instead of you advising us, can you build it? And it was really an opportunity for me to fulfill my passion in getting these entrepreneurs the requisite level of capital that they had deserved. Now, there was a three-part plan at the time that I had developed. And to overly simplify it, I wanted to devise techniques and support on how to get entrepreneurs first from businesses with zero revenue to $10 million. And then once they hit $10 million, it's really a new business going from 10 million to $100 million. And that's a different set of skills and requirements. And then the third and final step is, once we get enough businesses at 100 million in revenue, getting them to the $1 billion plus and building global businesses that stay in Canada. That was the mission that I set out to do in 2010, and ultimately gave up my career at Deloitte to follow this passion. And for the next 8 years, I believe that I had achieved those first two building blocks, but it was the third and final building block that I felt that I still needed to achieve. It was getting companies that have managed to get to the 100 million, and how do we get them to be the $1 billion plus companies like a Shopify and remaining headquartered in Canada. But I felt that it would be more effective to do that with my own firm. A great run over at OMERS to build my own firm, Mavericks. And I started in 2019 with this objective in mind, and my objective was to raise $500 million. And so I started in 2019. I also knew, or felt that I knew, that the world was going to implode by about the second half of 2020. And I felt that based on where interest rates were, macroeconomic events, didn't know COVID was looming around the corner. I had a few false starts, but very quickly gained the backing of a number of pension funds and other folks and financial institutions who wanted to back this ambitious plan that I had. And things were going very well, and we were going to start the first close of the fund in the Q1 of 2020. Great timing. And I was gearing all up. I had already identified about a dozen folks on the team who would work for us. I had a who's who of backers, etc. And then COVID hits, and crickets for basically 2 months. And after about 2 months, when people felt the world was no longer going to end, but it was going to take a little while, my lead investors had determined that we're going to start again the closing process. And that closing process was going to start around October 2020. And so I'm all excited, getting all ready again. And September 2020, every week, so I'd be writing my my bicycle, as Vincent mentioned, avid cyclist. I have a team that we go all around the world, cycling everywhere. And we were getting ready, as COVID was starting to lift, to go on our first trip and to cycle together. And so, because Toronto was largely vehicle free, I started for the first time ever cycling within the city of Toronto. And I live in the beaches, and I found a nice route to kind of get safely out of the city, go north of the city. And there was one particular route that I really liked, and every Wednesday I would just take a solo ride because it's COVID, and it's just a 100K loop, and I was 5K away from the destination. The turning point is Stouffville. I'd usually stop in Stouffville, get a little bit of coffee, and come back down. And as I was 5K away, ready for the turnoff, and I'm on Pickering Town Line, and it's 2-lane road, but vehicles can drive, I think it's 70 kilometers an hour, but there are some vehicles on that road that shouldn't be in there. And one was this tractor trailer that was a flatbed. You know, the individual, don't know what they were thinking, likely wasn't paying very good attention. And last thing I hear was the roar of the air brakes going on. And man, I'll never forget that. And you know what my first reaction is? I'm gonna punch this fucking idiot in the head who's riding on my wheels. Because lots of truck drivers, I don't know what's wrong with them, but they somehow feel this antagonistic feeling with cyclists. And I thought this was another one, and I was ready to say, okay. And then before I could react, I felt the hit on my back, crushed my spinal cord. But I also had a second injury because the vehicle was going between 80 and 90 kilometers an hour. And the impact of the force hitting the ground was just as dramatic or as impactful, frankly, maybe even more. It did split my pelvis into 6 places. I broke all of my ribs in multiple places. Lots of organ damage, had 50% of my blood gone. And here is, by the way, it's funny, I don't know if this is the Calabrese in me. I hit my head but didn't get a concussion, which is kind of funny. And apparently I woke up about 2 minutes later. And I woke up and said, fuck, I'm paralyzed. And 2 years prior, I don't know if any of you are go to Blue Mountain at all. I have a place there. There is this peak called Scenic Caves Road. Just 2 years prior, my front tire blew on the descent, and I'm going 70K on the descent of my bike, and it blew. And then I just remember clipping off and going like Superman off, and hit the pavement viciously. And I got up, dusted myself off, my shoulder was hanging, and I've had a number of cycling accidents, and I'm sure my wife and kids were thinking, it's just another one, you know, here's dad again, and getting clobbered. But I do remember waking up and immediately noticing that I am paralyzed, because there's a feeling of nothingness below your waist. And you know, I've had a spectacular life, and at that very moment, I felt that there was a decision of resiliency to be made. I really believe I could have easily have died at that spot. And in fact, my doctors do not understand. In fact, gruesomely, I should have suffocated to death the way that my ribs were broken, that I shouldn't have been able to breathe. But all I can remember was saying to myself, oh shit, I got 2 young kids. Just like your parents, what your parents shaped for you, I thought, I can't do that to them. And I thought about my wife, and I just thought, oh, damn. So I remember using my arm and trying to get up. And there was a woman witness who just said, sir, you're in really bad shape. Please don't move. And so, you know, on that test of resiliency, I knew that I had to get up. But I also knew that as I got up, and thinking about my family first, I also thought about that dream that I mentioned to you. I never finished the 3rd phase of the dream that I needed for Canada. And so, you know, after I emerged from, I slipped into a coma and was in hospital for 4 months recovering. And when I got out, I made a decision that the goal needed to go on. In fact, some of my investors thought I actually had hit my head. I was calling them on my back in the hospital. I couldn't move and I was bored, so I started calling them. And one guy, I could hear him. I go, hey, what's wrong? He goes, my wife said John Ruffolo's calling, and I thought you were dead. So he was running to the phone, and he just said he wanted to hear it. And I hear this long pause. He goes, John, he goes, John, you sound normal, man. Yeah. Hey, you know, about your commitment, you know, to the fund, you know, and he's like, yeah, you know, hey, we're gonna wait for you. Hey, where are you? And I just said, I'm in hospital. He said, you're in hospital? Are you in a hospital bed? It's like, yeah. He goes, and you fucking called me? Can you wait? And I said, yeah, but I was just double checking. And he said, look, don't worry about it. So I do leave hospital, and 100 days later, we closed the fund. And we ended up raising $500 million. And I think, you know, the goal that I really want to see is to fulfill the ambition for these Canadian entrepreneurs. So you know, and fulfill the ambition of seeing my kids, you know, go to, you know, university and see them going off into, you know, their workplaces, just like, you know, what our parents did for us. And so, you know, the last thing I will say, and I'm happy to take any questions if there's any time left, but I would say, you know, where there's resiliency, there's hope. Because if you're resilient to continue on doing what you want to do, you're seeing the next day, and seeing the next day is really all about hope. And, you know, today, all you here are really a reflection of when you went to UofT 35 years ago in some of the cases. I know not all of you. You had a hope of what you were going to do with your lives, and now you look back and you see what your resilience has done for you. So I congratulate you all, and I thank you again for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
And I'm also a child of immigrants, and resilience has always been something that's been in our family and what we believe in. And certainly our engineering students, as you said, we all had to be resilient. And I can see why this was an inspiration for the class of '88 who are creating a scholarship to help students during their resilience in engineering. So on behalf of all of us here at Engineering, just a small token.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you.
Thanks.